Hi, Notre Dame fans. Welcome in. I'm Ashton Pollard here with Tyler Horka, and we just wrapped up practice number 17. This video is going to cover both yesterday and today when we got to see the first 5 periods of practice, so first 30-ish minutes, so not a ton to see, but you can still glean a little bit from those practices. And then we were able to talk with the tight end room yesterday, as well as Coach Jared Parker, and then we just finished up talking with the cornerbacks and Coach Mike Micken. So we'll start with practice. Scout team is ramping up right now, which is exciting because it's almost Ohio State. They have all different numbers, which is very confusing, but I'll let you talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I haven't even tried to decipher who's who. Some of them are pretty obvious. Noah Ziegler is number 22, Jalen Steed number 15. You can kind of spot those guys, and they've actually given the offense some pretty good reps, I would say. So those are guys that aren't going to get defensive snaps against Ohio State. Let's just put that out there. Not a big surprise anyway. I mean, that linebacker room is so loaded. That the class of 2022 linebackers, they were loaded. Those guys need to beef up a little bit, bulk up before they get on the field. No surprise there. But they're giving some pretty good work to the offensive line. I would say the last couple of days of practice, I've really watched the offensive line more than I had in previous practices, because early in camp it was, how many combo blocks can I watch? How many times can I watch Z. Carell work with Josh Lugg or Jarrett Patterson, or Blake Fisher work with Josh Lugg, Joe Alt work with Jarrett Patterson, which is now Andrew Kristofic over there on the left side of the line. Because, I'll mention that right now, Jarrett Patterson is still in that boot. Was a hard cast. Maybe the last time that we talked to you guys, I'm not sure, it might have been a hard cast.
Yeah, no, that's right. The first time we saw him yesterday in the boot first time we saw him in the boot was yesterday, which was Wednesday. We last came to you on Monday when he was still in that hard cast.
Yeah, so now he's in a boot, like up to his shin, like his knee, basically. It's a big boot. Think of the biggest boot that you can think of. That's what he's wearing. We're like 9 days as we film this on Thursday night away from Notre Dame playing Ohio State. In my mind, I get a little more worried every time I see him not walking around in a shoe, at least. Maybe going through some like lower body reps of any sort. He's doing like 5 minutes in a row of crunches in the pit. That usually signifies someone who's not going to play in the next game, because we can start talking about Ohio State as the next game at this point. It's that close. Doesn't look good for him. Does look good for the wide receivers, I would say. Deion Colsey, Jaden Thomas, those guys have been practicing in a full capacity. Deion Colsey's still got that brace on his knee. Jaden Thomas looks really good. I'd say Joe Wilkins Jr. looks really good. So this week for me, from a wide receiver perspective, has been the most promising, the most optimistic that I've been about this group, probably for the entirety of camp, because you lose Avery Davis, I guess, a week and a half in, maybe 2 weeks in, and you're thinking, oh no, what's going to happen? But then you bring Xavier Watts over from safety, and then all these guys start coming back from their little nicks and bruises, whatever they have. So I'm pretty optimistic about the wide receivers, very optimistic about the offensive line, even without Jarrett Patterson. I think Kristofic can come in. He's not Jarrett Patterson, neither is Rocco Spindler. But the collective, I mean, you're losing 20% of an offensive line that was already really, really good. So the line's going to be good. Tyler Buchner has looked good. He looks like a quarterback number 1, but we really don't know what that looks like until he goes out there in the horseshoe at 7:30, whatever it is, prime time. So there's really not much more that we can say about the quarterbacks at this point. This was the last practice that we got to watch. So Tyler Buchner is Tyler Buchner, and he's going to be whoever he is when he rolls out there on Saturday night. We'll just have to see who that is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And kind of on the offensive line topic, I was going to say, no, Kristofic's not Patterson, but Kristofic would probably start on, 120 other FBS offensive lines. So
started for Notre Dame last year.
Yeah, that's true. He did. He started here last year, and I guess that was later in the season, so right when it turned around a little bit more. So, is that a coincidence? You can decide that. On the topic kind of the wide receiver / Xavier Watts, he was practicing with the safeties today, but he was in his wide receiver blue uniform. The offense has those blue uniforms. They won that as a result of winning a scrimmage now 2 weeks ago, about 10 days ago-ish. So he was practicing, but he was in his wide receiver stuff. I was watching the safeties for most of practice today because it was really, really interesting. Chris O'Leary, the coach, was very, very animated, hyping his guys up. I heard a lot of, let's go Ramon Henderson, Brandon Joseph. It's a heavy emphasis on stripping the ball and forcing turnovers, getting picks, all of that. At one point, O'Leary literally yelled, get the ball out at all costs. So not to say, obviously, I don't have a frame of reference from last year, but it seems like that turnover emphasis was not just like an early camp thing or like a drill right after they finish stretching. That's bleeding over into their position groups, and that's something that they're heavily practicing and focused on. Otherwise, on the defensive front, I mean, the defensive line looks incredible. There aren't a lot of concerns there. We can kind of lead into we talked with the corners a minute ago. They've also looked pretty good, and Cam Hart, again, was back out there doing the majority of the drills. Like I said, I was watching safeties and corners, which are kind of in opposite ends of the end zone, so didn't see every rep that Cam Hart maybe would have taken, but he looked pretty good. But yeah, we can start talking about corners, I guess, if that works. I know you talked with Clarence Lewis and Ben Morrison, so how was that?
I'll spend my time talking about Ben Morrison because I'm instantly a Ben Morrison fan. The guy, I didn't realize he's one of 5 kids. Every single one of his siblings plays a Division I sport somewhere. I guess he's the youngest. So the second youngest in the family just won a gymnastics national title at Michigan, which he called that other school, I think, by the way. So
that school up north. He's taking on an Ohio State persona.
Yeah. Apparently he does not like Michigan, so He made that very clear. But I think he's a really interesting guy, a confident guy. We talked in one of these videos about him hitting Logan Diggs, and I brought that up to him, and he said, that's just ball, man. Like, we're good. As soon as we left the door, it stayed on the football field, essentially, is what he said. So, confident guy, fun guy to talk with. You can ask him, like, a question about anything, and he'll go on for a minute about it. You usually don't get that with the true freshman. No. You got to remember, this kid is 18 years old. Think about what you were doing when you were 18 years old. I don't think you were standing in front of people who covered Notre Dame football for a living, and I think he was up there maybe the longest of anyone. Cam Hart was up there a while, Tariq Bracy, but he spoke for like 20 minutes. Yeah. That's not usual for a freshman. So obviously he's probably not going to play a big role for Notre Dame right away. You have Clarence Lewis, you have Cam Hart, you have Tariq Bracy. But watch out for that kid at some point in his career because I think he's going to start for Notre Dame. I think he's going to be a really good starter.
Yeah, in addition to the 5 siblings, his dad was an NFL. Right. I don't know what position he played, but he played in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I was talking with Ryan Barnes for most of the time, who I think is pretty interesting, especially after the spring game. He led the team in tackles. He had 6 tackles. So I asked him about that, and he gave kind of the quintessential, like, that was great, that was awesome, but like, I'm looking forward. But he did kind of light up when I asked him about it. So I think he did kind of like that recognition, which makes sense. But he was great to talk to. He's really confident in this group, and like Tyler said, they do have that Cam Hart, Tariq Bracy, Clarence Lewis kind of trio that has all the experience. I mean, not all, but a vast majority of the experience. But Ryan's confident. He's excited. He's ready to go. He's really, really lengthy, which I think is good, especially when you're going to play a lot of pass-heavy offenses, which he talked about kind of how that was one of his strengths too. But yeah, after that, I mean, not a ton else. The cornerback group is also a little bit kind of solidified at this point. There's not a ton of movement. We can talk a little bit about the tight ends that we talked to yesterday. So we got Michael Mayer, Davis Sherwood, who was just put on scholarship earlier this week, which was exciting, and then Kevin Bauman. Am I forgetting anybody?
It might have just been those 3.
I believe it was just those 3, and then we got to talk with Jared Parker. Michael Mayer is Michael Mayer. I don't know if you have anything else to say on that topic.
I don't know about that Ohio State quote that he put out.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
But look, he was being honest.
Yeah.
It's not like he was firing from the hip, trying to, get a rouse out of both fan bases. It happened that way, but that's just anybody could have said that and it would have happened that way. It just so happened to be that Michael Mayer said that Ohio Stadium, the Horseshoe, one of the most famed college venues in the country, is just another stadium that we're going to play in this year. Yeah, I think the Ohio State fans definitely heard that. The players probably heard that. But look, the football game is going to go on the same way it was going to before he said that. But I did think as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, it's just something that you don't say. But Michael Mayer, I wrote about it at blueandgold.com. I was like, he can say whatever he wants. Yeah. He's one of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end in the country. So he was being honest. He's like, that field's the same, length, width. I'm going to go out there and try to make catches. He's made a lot of those in his career. He's going to make a lot of that night probably, whether Notre Dame wins or loses. So, yeah, Michael Mayer is Michael Mayer. I will say lastly, Kevin Bauman I think is like the number 2 tight end for this team. Everyone likes to talk about the freshmen because, yes, they are really good. Holden Stays, Eli Raridan. And then those sophomores, Mitchell Evans, when he comes back, and Kane Barong, they're also really good. Lost in the shuffle is Kevin Bauman. I think he's going to be really good. I think that's a really good 1-2 combo for Notre Dame at tight end, Mayer, Bauman.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And obviously I didn't know Bauman last year, but it seems like his confidence is up a lot. And he was kind of brutally honest. He was asked about, Brian Kelly made a comment last year about him being a bull in a china shop. And he kind of embraced it. And he was like, yeah, that's not the best description. I kind of took that and went and studied and figured out how I could be a little bit more productive on that side. But yeah, Jared Parker was very optimistic about the group. Obviously, again, Michael Mayer's Michael Mayer. But yeah, he was very high on the freshman, very high on Bauman, very high on Barong, and he was even asked about Evans too when he comes back. The timeline on that is still, I don't know exactly when. And Parker's obviously not a medical professional either, but he was just like, I don't know, and I'm not qualified to comment on that. But maybe midway through the season, I think was what was originally said. But I think the room is in good hands regardless. I know when Evans went down, there was a big, oh my gosh, who's going to be tight end too? And I think that Bauman can definitely embrace that, and then you can pepper in the freshmen and the other two the one sophomore, I guess, until Evans returns. But I think, as with all Notre Dame football, expect multiple tight end packages. And also they've been focused a lot on blocking too, which is good. Mayer, can probably block anybody, but those freshmen are out there blocking every day. Like they're that whole mantra of protect the quarterback or you're not going to play. It applies to everyone, as we kind of said on this last video. It's not just the offensive linemen. It applies to the tight ends, receivers, running backs, everybody. So with that, I guess we will wrap up here. As Tyler said, this was our last open practice, but we will get to talk with Tommy Reese and Al Golden on Saturday, and that will conclude fall camp, because then you enter the normal game week procedure. There is media and stuff like that, which I'm sure you all will hear about later. But this was our last look at fall camp, and they're ramping up for Ohio State. So we will be back on Saturday. Make sure that you check out blueandgold.com. We still have that $1 deal running, and everything that we just talked about will be on there in more detail with more, in addition to all the recruiting stuff and all the other sports that we cover. So make sure you check that out, and we will see you next time.